did I end up here? Seriously, how did I get here? We've had some fun on this channel the last few weeks. We've complained about things we don't like. I showed you some cool instruments that you can buy and learn how to play. But now it's time to get serious and take a look at all that goes into writing music. About a week ago, I woke up with this beautiful, angelic, high falsetto voice singing this pop anthem in my ear. Maybe it was an angel, maybe it was my muse, but either way, it gave me the gift of this beautiful melody. And I didn't want to waste it. I immediately sang it into my phone, and I came down here and I started writing. Now, the idea was to kind of be this big, bold pop anthem, really strong beat, something that you could groove to, and then somewhere along the way, we ended up here. And I know what you're thinking, what's the big deal? This is a banger. If this were on Spotify right now, I would listen to it over and over again. And I agree with you, it's wonderful. I love the tone of the guitars, I love what I was able to put together, but it's not right. And so I've been sitting here for days trying to figure out where I went wrong. Somewhere in this puzzle of notes and rhythms and harmonies, something is not quite gelling. And that's the problem that every music writer, songwriter, composer goes through, is taking that idea that's in their head and putting it into the recording software, putting it into the sheet music, putting it under your fingers on a guitar or piano. That's the struggle. And it's the same no matter what level you are, whether you've been to music school, haven't been to music school, whether you're Hans Zimmer or no one sitting in their basement. It's still the same panic. It's still the same paranoia. The only difference is that if you've been to music school, you feel it a little harder because you feel like you have no excuses. Thankfully, because of extensive ear training, it's not that hard for me to take the melody out of my head and get it into some recording software just so I have the melody and I don't have to think about that anymore. Do you remember when you were in English class and you were reading plays, Shakespeare, things like that, and they started going over the difference between tone and theme? Never has that been more apparent to me than in this moment. What I have here is something wonderful. It's a nice beat, it's a good groove, I love it. And the theme is there. It's still a love song, there's still heart in it, there's still emotion in it. The theme is correct, it's the tone that is wrong. And I think I finally figured it out. I think I know where I went wrong. Music writing, a lot of times, is problem solving and putting the puzzle pieces in the right place. And this is where I think I lost track, right here. Ready? The snare. When I started working on this song, I was nervous because I have this fear that's built into me, and I'm sure it's been covered by psychology. I'm sure there's a name for it. I don't know what the name is. It's kind of like imposter syndrome mixed in with perfectionism or something like that. But I knew going into this I was gonna have trouble translating the exact tone that I had in my head, and so it made me nervous to even hit the button on my computer, load the software, and start putting music down. But that's no way to live. And I told myself ahead of time, don't get caught up in all the kicks and snares and bass lines. Just get the music there, and then you can trade things out. You can find a new snare, find a new kick, find a new bass, do whatever you want. And I think that's great advice. Just get the music there and then re-record until it sounds like you want it in your head. The only problem is that I'm very impressionable and beholden to the sounds that I choose. Once I choose something and I go with it for a while, I let that tone sort of influence the song, let it create a mind of its own, and let it go where it wants to go. So the choice of that snare alone is what led me to these guitars sounding like this, to the bass line sounding like this, to the pad of the guitar chord sounding like this. And I turned an epic pop anthem into a love ballad. And I know what you're thinking, dude, it's just a snare drum. What's the big deal? Okay, you choose one. Ready? That was like 1% of the snares I have access to. All right? It's the burden of choice. I wish there were only 3 snares to choose from. Then I would say, well, it's all I got, so I'm just gonna pick one of these and move on. But no, I've got 5,000 snares that I need to wade through and find the perfect one. Sound can have such an impact on human beings, but especially music composers. You just let these sounds take over and let the songs go where they may. And in some instances, that's exactly what you should do. It's perfect. Just listen to the beat that I have playing right now. I wrote this beat in about 5 minutes. I just wanted something I could lay under my video so that it wouldn't sound so dry. I didn't have a lot emotionally invested in this beat. I just let it kind of go where it wanted to go, and it produced this great beat that I can have under my videos. But this, I'm putting so much pressure on it. I want it to be perfect. I want it to be this thing on Spotify that you can listen to all throughout the summer and just love it. So now I have to make a choice. Do I click save as and make this a whole new track with new lyrics, new melodies, new music, new everything? Do I just make it work because it sounds really nice and then I let this song take shape and change what I had in my head to this new thing? It's a tough choice. But that's what we go through as music composers. What do? Do I have yet another track that I've started that I don't finish because it wasn't quite right? I don't know. Yesterday, I'd made up my mind exactly what I was gonna do. Today, I woke up and I totally changed it. And that's the struggle with the music that you hear in your head that you then have to go record. You might have the perfect kick and the perfect snare in your head, but then you gotta go find it. You gotta go create it. You gotta shape it. You gotta mold it. It's tough. You know, you hear a lot of this music on the radio. A lot of times it was created by a lot of people. The artist, but then there's the producer, the studio musicians that come in and have their influence on it. I mean, a lot of hands touch it. We don't have that luxury sitting here in our basements writing music. It's all us. We have to do everything. And I don't think I'd have it any other way. It's how I prefer it. So the pieces of advice that I'm giving myself, and then maybe by extension to you if you're going through this same thing about the music in your head and how to make it perfect. First thing I've done, which has served me really well, is not judge myself too harshly. Musicians wear their hearts on their sleeves, you know. So when it doesn't go right, you're really hard on yourself. You feel like it's you. Maybe a little bit of the imposter syndrome sets in, and you're mopey and the whole house knows it because you got this chip on your shoulder. So my first rule is not to judge myself. It's no way to live, and it's counterproductive to the creative process. Second thing I'm gonna do is go on an exploratory mission for a new snare. I think when I have the right snare sound, this will come together a little easier. Thirdly, I'm gonna use that save as button as many times as I want and create 100 versions of this that I can always go back and reference until I find something that I'm settled with. Third, I'm not gonna be afraid to re-record and redo things. You know, sometimes there's a laziness to songwriting too. You just want it to be done. So those guitars, right? You know, maybe the reverb isn't perfect for the original sound of the tone in my head. So maybe I have to go back and dial it in and re-record it. So just do it. How long could that possibly take? Just do it. And you know, one of the things I did is I went back and I re-listened on my phone to that original recording when I first had the idea to try to remember exactly what tone I had in my head. But the problem is that as soon as you record something and you start listening to it, it starts shaping that original idea of what you had in your head, and you start to forget what the original idea was. You know, what were those instruments that I heard in my head when I first had this melody? What was going on? What sort of bass line was it? What sort of rhythms and melodies were in the background? The more you listen to what you put down, the more that becomes the idea in your head and it takes over. So sometimes you gotta step away. You gotta Control S, shut it down, go play a video game, go do something else, and then sit and calmly think about it again. And that's when it goes back to theme versus tone. The theme is correct, but the tone is wrong. So just listen to it. Listen to it in your head. What is the tone? What do you want people to feel when you're listening to this? There's a lot that goes into writing music. You have to think a lot before you even put something down. You have to sit here and contemplate and figure it out. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice for getting that stuff in your head out into the recording software. It's just remember the tone. Remember the tone that you had. Because listen, I don't think any song that's ever been written ever comes out exactly as it was intended. Music changes, music evolves, that's just how it is. And it's usually better. So also, don't struggle for absolute perfection of what was in your head. Just make sure it's better. Make sure the tone is there. Make sure the song feels the way that you wanted it to feel. Right now, this doesn't feel right. This feels great for another track, but it doesn't feel right for what's in my head. So I gotta work at it. I gotta change it. Change the snare, maybe dry up the guitar sound a little bit. It's a little wet and lush with reverb, and then look at it again, reassess, re-record, save as, save as, save as, make multiple copies. Go from there. My final piece of advice, like all great pieces of advice, comes from a movie. Writing music is hard. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. The hard is what makes it great, so hang in there. So for all my fellow songwriters out there, I would love to know how you handle getting the music out of your head and into the recording software. What kind of things do you do when it's just not coming together, when it just doesn't sound like it sounds in your head? What kind of steps do you take to get over that? Do you also have that fear of not even wanting to start the project because you're worried it's not going to sound right? Having that irrational fear to even start? I would love to know. Well, I hope everybody's doing great out there. Hopefully the world will get back to normal soon, and I'll see you next week.